Hello and welcome to the Overland Journal podcast. I am your host, Scott Brady, and I'm here with my co-host, Matt Scott. And today's episode is brought to you by Danner Boots. This is a product I have used personally around the world. So has Matt. I have some great memories of crossing the Namib Desert in some of their desert boots. But today we're going to talk about the new Logger 917, which was inspired by the classic pattern and lines of Danner's original caulked logging boots made in the Pacific Northwest. Built with Danner's trusted quality and durability, the Logger 917 is designed to ensure you're comfortable and dry wherever your overlanding takes you. With a Gore-Tex waterproof liner and Vibram SPE rubberized EVA midsole, the Logger 917 offers performance, waterproofing, and lightweight comfort, all in a rugged yet refined style. So thanks again to Danner for supporting this podcast, and let's get on to the episode. And we're not only recording for Apple Podcasts and everywhere else that you may choose to listen to a podcast, we also now have
YouTube.
We have live video
YouTube
feed.
People.
Yeah.
YouTube.
Yeah. So that's why I'm wearing a hat, just to spare you all.
Well, because I wore a hat, so you
glow.
had to wear a hat.
No, it's mostly the glow from my bald head is why I'm wearing a hat.
I was trying to hide my luscious blonde locks, but you know,
I do not have locks of any kind.
what can we do?
So what are we going to talk about today?
We're
Matt?
talking about planning your first overland adventure, and I really like this concept. I mean, I think that we do tend to pontificate about international travel and these significant explorative trips, but it all starts somewhere. Like I remember my first overland trip, my first 4-wheel drive trip.
What was your first notable overland trip? The one that you really remember being afraid and underplanned? And
I mean, I'm originally from Chicago, for those that don't know. And my first real thing was when I moved out here to work for Expedition Portal like 10 years ago. And I honestly have to say it was loading up my super, super janky TJ, which at the time I didn't even know was janky. I thought it was the panty dropper. It was
ignorance
really
is bliss.
Cool. But it had like a 8-inch long arm lift in 35s. And like,
I remember
probably had some kind of tube door on it. It broke a lot. I remember going through like Mexican Hat, Utah, which is now a place that I don't even blink to go through. And I'm like, oh my God, if I break down here, I'll be on expedition. But the point that I'm going is everybody starts somewhere. And I think that we've both made a lot of mistakes. I mean, you were saying that you had enough fuel to go to Cleveland when you did your first trip to Arizona.
My first memorable longer distance overland trip was El Camino del Diablo in southern Arizona. And it is about 150 miles or so between fuel points, and you do get fairly remote. And you run a lot of it along the Mexican border. And I definitely had enough fuel to do the trip probably four times. I had it strapped to I had every like lawn gasoline container, and they were all the wrong size.
Yeah.
And like none of them was a NATO can. They all leaked, and none of them would strap down, and they all swelled because of the corrugations and the heat and everything.
Pressure changes. And
yeah. And I towed a trailer filled with a bunch more stuff that I didn't need. I mean, it's amazing that little troop.
Did you have your ice axe with you for the desert?
I think I did. I think I had an ice axe and about 5 compass and everything.
The point here is that you can do a lot with surprisingly little. And I think that that's really what we're both trying to say, is that you don't have to be over prepared. You just have to not be under prepared. I think that's a big thing. And it's totally okay to recognize that you have anxiety about doing, your first extended off-road trip.
I certainly did. I remember feeling like that I didn't have enough information. I was worried I was going to get lost. I didn't know what was going to happen if I broke down. I do remember feeling that anxiety. And I also, I think it's just important for people to also give themselves some grace. If you do take enough fuel to go to Cleveland, it's just okay. If
that is what enables you to do the trip, because I think one of the things that we were talking about is it's generally not just the driver. There's a lot of other people involved in the trip, and let's say your wife's driving and you're the one in the passenger seat that is absolutely terrified of running out of gas. If that makes the passenger more comfortable.
Yeah. Bring some more fuel along.
Bring some more fuel, whatever. Like it's not going to hurt anybody. Eschew the people who are overly critical, because I assure you 90% of those people just probably haven't done half the things they claim to do. Maybe that's the wrong way to say it, but they're not as experienced as they love to portray to be. There are a lot of internet experts. So just,
be gentle on yourself and recognize that we've all started from somewhere. Even that person on the internet that's espousing all of their knowledge, they started with their first trip as well. And I do remember being anxious, and I remember being worried, and I remember over planning some parts of it and under planning other parts of it. One of the things that we wanted to talk about on this podcast is just go local first.
Yeah.
Go close enough to home where if something doesn't work, the tent breaks or the stove doesn't light or whatever, you can drive home and still enjoy the rest of your weekend and learn from that. And it doesn't mean don't go for it. I mean, there have been people, I think about the first Overland trip, those guys that drove from London to Singapore, they had no real experience. They just set off. Karen and Kuhn, the Wubbles that have that yellow FJ45 that we all admire and not only adore their vehicle, but they've had these amazing trips. When they left on their Overland trip was the first time they had ever done a trip. So they left their home and started driving east to take the Silk Road, and they had never overlanded before of any note. So that's amazing to me. It just shows that sometimes if you don't know what's coming, that can also empower you to just do it.
And I think savor that first trip. I mean, I'm talking about that trip when I drove out west for my first time, and I'm camping here and I'm doing this, and I went through Moab, and I thought Moab was this crazy place. Now I wish I could have that. I'm not saying I wish I could have the anxiety that came along with planning for that, but I wish I could have that excitement,
that newness.
This trip, your first Overland trip, has the potential to be your best, right? Savor the things that go wrong. There's that saying, adventure doesn't start until something goes wrong.
Sure.
But it's kind of true. I mean, we've both been on trips where, we've done this a few times and we plan them to the nth degree. And I don't want to say that they're boring. They're very enjoyable. But I miss those rookie mistakes, those new things that, you can't replicate seeing something for the first time in such a different way.
Sure.
I mean, I was a kid from the suburbs of Chicago that, had dreamed of driving past the Continental Divide. I had never really camped. I had never really done, a lot of the things that I wanted to do, but, you have to do your first trip.
Yep.
And don't hold yourself to be too critical. I think that's just super important.
And I love it that I still make tons of mistakes. Yeah. I mean, when I did the bigger, maybe more serious trips where there was a lot of consequence, I probably overplanned because it was necessary.
Like when you're in Greenland though, and you have to underplan, legitimately people can die.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was definitely true of Antarctica, and even regulations required a certain degree of planning. But I do like it now when, like, for example, when I did that trip on the motorcycle to Swaziland, and I've got just one bag strapped to the back, and we've kind of spread our tools out between the three of us, and we really don't have a plan, and we were getting lost, and it was perfect because it felt comfortable to be in that state of chaos. And I think that that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about on this podcast is that inherently things will not go as planned.
And that's okay.
And it's okay because we oftentimes have people with us. We have our partner, or we have our kids, possibly our families with us, maybe a parent, that when things don't go well, or that brand new GPS stops working, or we forget. I mean, the last trip that I went on, I forgot all of my maps. And at first I got frustrated with myself, but then I just thought, I'm doing something wonderful with somebody that I care about. Why shouldn't I just let that go? And if I get lost, it's okay because I've got an inReach and I've I'm on the Mogollon Rim. I'm not going to get that lost. Yeah. Eventually I'm going to bump into a road.
Eventually there will be a UTV filled with Coors Light that goes by.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of talked about family in the process. And I think that that's something that, that I've learned is it's just important to involve other people in the planning. It's not all about the person behind the wheel. And I think that if more people knew that going out, more people would be doing this.
Yeah. The more you engage your family, like for example, if your husband, he's hesitant to go camping, he doesn't know how to drive a manual, he's not really an outdoors guy. And you're like, I really want to go on this trip. Take him out and show him how to drive a manual. Make that be part of the fun. Show him a little bit more of how the camping gear works, how to light the stove or whatever, so that he feels more comfortable as your passenger when you take him out into the back of Beyond.
Yeah. And learn how to shit in the woods. I know that sounds, that's a really big thing, but did I know how to effectively and properly do that when I first started going camping? No, but it's like one of those things like, oh, he doesn't know how to go in the woods. Like, yeah, okay, cool. You'll learn. It's something that humans have been doing for a really long time. It
does kind of come naturally once you.
Yeah, it does come naturally. So, but maybe that was a crude example. But the point being that, you always talk about the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's the more you know, the more you know that you don't actually know as much as you think you do.
Right.
And there's this weird bell curve of people that love to talk smack to beginners because they were one
5 minutes ago.
Yeah. So, don't listen to those people. Recognize people's fears, recognize people's shortcomings and figure it out. Maybe that means that you go camping in a state park next to your house for a night just to
sort stuff out.
How you set the tent up and how you figure out how to put the car into low range or whatever that means. Just don't be afraid of the first time. Certainly, I think there's a lot of people in the community that, would love to help, but
yeah, absolutely. And I think, also, what I recognized in the beginning was that I was doing a lot of the trips that I was doing, a lot of the activities around the trips that I was doing, was I was emulating people that I either aspired to be or I deeply respected. And I realized that that's often a mistake, that the best thing to do is sit down with your partner, sit down with your family, sit down with yourself if you're solo traveling, and really decide what it is that makes you happy, that gets you excited about being a traveler. Is it that you love history? Is it that you really love good food in crazy places? And you've watched a lot of Anthony Bourdain, who's a great person to aspire to be.
A huge motivation for me was the food. I look at people that have like mountain house little freeze dried meals when they're camping, and they're convinced that that's cool. I'm like,
you don't need it. I mean, maybe have a couple of them for an emergency, but
never.
Yeah. I mean, and there's better.
I'd rather starve.
Yeah. I figure I could probably last a while out there in the back of Beyond.
Always bring water. Don't bring freeze dried food when you have a car to transport real food.
Yeah, for sure. But then other people
but if you're comfortable with that.
Totally. Yeah. If it makes you feel like that you're a little more prepared, or if you're going someplace super remote, again, back to Antarctica and Greenland, there's only so much fresh food that you can take along for over a month of travel. So
no foie gras, no champagne.
No.
Disappointing.
No, I think we did have some Shackleton's whiskey for the South Pole, thanks to Chris Collard. So yeah, but we didn't have much as far as luxury.
Back to starting in the state park next to your house. What are the things that actually interest you, right? And we're going to kind of move into how to plan that trip. And I think that this is, I guess, maybe a little bit of an interesting of a segue, a little bit ahead of plan. But, I love Google My Maps. It's basically a feature within Google Maps. And it allows you to, save waypoints.
You can save POIs, you can save waypoints, you can import XML files, you can import KML files, you can export both of those file formats as well. You can plan and draw entire routes. It's super powerful.
It's a super accessible, free tool that for most things that I feel a beginner is going to do, it allows you to actually see on the map where the gas stations are, where the grocery store is, where the state park, where the state park check-in office is, where, all of these things. Like the world is on Google Maps. If it's not on Google Maps, it doesn't essentially exist. Now, I will say that if you are planning a more technical 4-wheel drive route, like you're going to go and you're going to, I don't even
Mackenzie Trail or
something a little bit more core. You might be better served by Gaia or Onyx or something like that. But when it comes to just compiling data for travel, not necessarily purely off-road, recreational sport 4-wheel driving, I always start in Google and then I will transfer things elsewhere.
It translates. You can do all of that planning in Google My Maps, which, by the way, for those of you who are subscribers to Overland Journal magazine, when you see a map in Overland Journal, all of the base files were created in Google My Maps because it's such an easy way to share information.
Awesome. Yeah. And you can collaborate with people, again, pulling on that community. One of the things that even I do, I'll use Baja for an example. I really love Baja. Baja is a place that you can spend a lifetime going to, and you could never on your own compile a sufficient amount of knowledge. It's, take this little track to this little beach where you're going to meet this guy and he's going to unlock the gate for you. With Google My Maps, you can literally go to somebody that maybe that has been down there a few times and, hey, this is where we're thinking about going. Could you mark a few places on the map for me?
Yeah, you can share it with them.
It can be collaborative, and since it is Google and it's not a more specific app, it's accessible to everybody. Everyone can use Google. Mm-hmm. Not everybody is going to have Onyx or Gaia or a variety of these things. HEMA, if you're in Australia or
Sure.
something. It's really easy to plan. Obviously we're recording this during the whole COVID thing. We were hoping to be in Alaska basically now, for a few months this summer. And one of the things that I've been going back and I'm adding to this Google My Maps, like that's how I'm planning, particularly those trips where you're covering long distances where you have to interact with civilization. You have to know where, okay, cool. Well, if I'm going to go to Keno City in the middle of the Yukon, I actually need to know where I need to get gas. And that's really, really easy to do on Google My Maps. That's not something that you could do on Gaia or Onyx. They just don't have that data available.
And I love how you can switch back and forth between satellite images and their base maps. So if you're a little uncertain, okay, where does that trail peel off from the highway?
Yeah.
You can switch over to satellite and sure enough, it's right there, plain as day. You can drop a waypoint and then you can take that whole project and export it as a KML file, KMZ file, XML file as well. And most of those can be consumed by both Gaia and Onyx or HEMA if you're in Australia.
And if you want a dedicated device, I mean, some people just don't want to have things on their phone like that Garmin Overlander. You can plan things, I think, on Garmin's website.
Correct.
I have a lot of friends that use that. I think it has iOverlander built in.
It does. All those POIs are built in.
And iOverlander is a fantastic application and website. I use it frequently. I think, again, not to keep bringing up anxiety, but I think there's a lot of anxiety that comes into your first overland trip, and knowing where you're camping as far as planning a route. I think that is where you start. You kind of have to know where you're sleeping. I think once you've done it a few times, you can kind of learn to go with the flow and, we made it a little bit further, so we're going to find another spot up here or wherever that may be. Using tools like iOverlander 2-3 years ago, it was not the resource it was. Now, if you want to find cool, vehicle-based camping specific spots, iOverlander's wonderful.
I use it all the time now. I started using it only this year. I did a trip because of, again, the scenario that we're in right now as a global community, I haven't been able to travel internationally. So I hopped in an earth cruiser and started going up and down the Oregon coast.
Yeah.
And I was just letting it totally be serendipitous. And sure enough, you pull up iOverlander and here's a perfect little camp spot right there on the coast. And there is one thing that comes to mind though, on a lot of these community-based tools is we have to be very careful around overuse. We have to be super cautious to leave places better than we found them. If you see trash there, it is your responsibility to pick it up.
100%.
Because there's no question about that. I wouldn't consider any argument to the contrary. If there is trash at an iOverlander spot, you are an overlander that's using a tool to get there and the place has been trashed. Take the 15 minutes, pull out a trash bag and clean it up, because people that are in that local area are going to associate iOverlander and overlanders with that trash, whether it came from an overlander or not. And also, if you can find other campsites nearby, don't camp at the one where the pin's been dropped, to start to distribute some of the impact into other locations as well. So we do have responsibility as travelers when we use tools like that.
Yeah. And I think iOverlander is, it's just a hugely powerful tool.
Very helpful.
To be able to plan, there's a little turnoff here where you can camp outside of town. It's just huge. And I think, try to not set the expectations for your first adventure, for your first overland journey too high. If you are, thinking that you're going to be Ranulph Fiennes the first time you leave Iowa, you're probably not.
You might lose a few more fingers than he did.
Yeah. The point being, keep yourself comfortable, keep yourself sane, consider everybody that is in your entire party. They may not have the same, tough constitution that you do. So don't feel like you have to right off the bat go for the most remote, most technical trip. And I think it goes without saying, like, if you are going to go off-road and you don't have a lot of experience, look up the I4WDTA. It's the International Four-Wheel Drive Trainers Association. They are a great place to start for getting proper training.
Yep.
If there isn't an I4WDTA person, I'm not saying that they have to be an I4WDTA person. They are really the only major governing body. So it's a great place to start for recommendations. But, find a local four-wheel drive club, find a local guide or a local trainer. I shouldn't say guide, find a local trainer that is, they're going to be a great resource for you. Take a class with them.
And it'll give a lot of confidence for those first couple trips. Yeah, it's interesting. If we engage the people that we travel with in the process, it always seems to go better.
Yes.
The more that we silo our goals and desires and don't engage our families or our partners, it tends to go much worse. So people just want to know. People want to be involved with the planning. They're taking their time too. Ask your kids what they want to see.
Yeah.
Maybe your daughter wants to see the world's biggest ball of yarn and it's only a 20-mile detour.
Go to the ball of yarn.
Go to the ball of yarn and enjoy that part of the experience by doing that with your family. I think that's really important.
You may enjoy the trail. I think people tend to, I think, at a very broad level, what is the difference between overlanding and four-wheel driving? It's the things you see outside of the trail.
Totally.
That might be controversial, but if you're going and you are, you're just going to do Hell's Revenge and Moab, or you're just going to do, fins and things, you're not overlanding. I'm sorry. I know everybody. I know everybody wants the badge,
a day of four-wheeling, sure.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're going to go and you're going to do Lockhart Basin, well, maybe somebody in your car is really into hiking, and there's some amazing places once you get back there that have Colorado River access that are great hikes. That adds to the trip. That is overlanding. It is a more holistic travel-based view at, remote vehicle travel.
And take a hike. Go check out the petroglyphs.
I was so horrible with this when I first started. I wouldn't get out of the car.
Yeah.
The idea of taking my, at the time ground tent and placing it anywhere next to my car. maybe there's a better campsite that your car can't get to. Be open, I think is really all we are advocating for, and really try to figure out what everybody in the car wants to do.
Yeah. Honor the desires of the people that are with you, and you'll end up with a better result for sure.
Yeah. Because a car of unhappy people getting bounced around a rocky 4-wheel drive trail,
it's going to come back to bite you.
It's going to come back to bite you. Like it's just not fun, but.
All right. So one of the things that I think is helpful, and I still enjoy to this day, is buying a couple guidebooks, buying a couple overlanding, getting started with overlanding books. For those of you that are watching the videos. So this one's done by Graham Bell. It's beautifully designed. Yeah. Great photography.
Look at that text. I wish I'd opened to an image.
And a bunch of great insights into travel with a family. They traveled around the world, 4 of them in a Defender 130. So a lot of great lessons in that. And then of course the evergreen Chris Scott Overlander's Handbook. It does certainly go into the weeds of things that you would need for big global travel, but it has tons of practical considerations. And one of the things I really like about Chris Scott is he does not spend money where it doesn't need to be spent. He spends the majority of his money on the experience. So there's lots of insights into spending less, going further with your budget.
I think he's really practical too.
Very practical.
Very, very practical guy. Great dude. And let's not forget actual paper maps.
Yeah, there's such joy in having those paper maps.
I have to say that, there's all of this talk about how I love Google Maps and these apps. One, always have paper maps, because your cell phone can fall and it can break. It can run out of charge. You may have to leave your vehicle. I'm not trying to paint like this terrible picture of all of these things that can go wrong, because, 99.9% of the time, nothing is. But I think that there's something special to kind of just like opening a map and you're like,
you see a different scale, right?
Yeah. Like, oh, okay, cool. Well, this town is close to this town. And then there's this road. Let's check it out. Always, always, always have paper maps. In today's day and age, maps are cheap. This is $22. And this particular one is for the state of Montana, but it is quite detailed. They make these for most Western states where I guess.
Yeah, I think it's just good to have them in the vehicle and include some of the neighboring states as well, because you never know if you want to extend by a couple days. I'll use the paper maps to kind of start the day. I'll sit down with those that I'm traveling with and say, this is kind of where we're going. And it gives people
they're great for kids. They're great for your partner. They're great for whoever you're planning the trip with, to just, because looking at your own screen, like there's that anxiety of handing somebody your phone or your iPad or whatever, God forbid they look through your internet history, but there's no internet history with paper maps. So it's just a wonderful thing to plan with. I really, really advocate. I know it sounds like a really basic thing, but
it's super important.
Make sure that they're topographic maps, make sure that they are targeted towards backcountry travel. A lot of the generic atlases that you get from Rand McNally, those are oriented for highway travel. Mm-hmm. That's really what they're meant and designed for. And that's fine.
And that's one of the things that I like about the benchmark maps is that they have they indicate what it's private land, public land, national forests. In Arizona, for example, you have to have a permit to be on state trust land.
Yes,
that's true of many states. So and Onyx certainly helps with that too.
Yeah, Onyx is the best that I've found as far as whose land are you on? Can you actually be there? I think their background is in hunting. The Onyx app is wonderful. We've talked about Google My Maps. We've talked about Gaia. I think that Onyx is really, really beneficial for people that are starting from a beginning. When I pull it up in Prescott here, they've kind of digitized the forest roads and trails and some of the forest roads that aren't just generic roads that, like, let's say Smiley Rock, which is a trail by us, will actually kind of be a user review. And you can see some photos of where you're going to go, how you're going to do it. It's a great entry level tool, and not just entry level. Cause
I use it all the time.
Call me entry level. I don't care. I still use it. and that's an app that is from I think a pretty reputable company that has some cool things coming out in the future. But we should probably get into like the basic equipment that you should bring with you.
That's right. And we do have a fairly thorough podcast. It's podcast number 20, where we talk about basic equipment that you need to bring for overland travel. But I think it's important to touch on those key pieces because, again, the goal here is just to encourage everyone and even ourselves to remind Matt and myself that the key is just to go.
Just go.
And travel the world, see what you want to go see, and don't make it about the gear. Don't make it about the vehicle. It doesn't matter what car you've got. You can go around the world in a Subaru, you can go around the world in a Honda Civic for that matter. So it's really about getting out there. But there are things that as we start to get outside of the infrastructure of paved roads and cities and travel and logistics routes, that you need to take into consideration.
And I think it's just a matter of being responsible and self-sufficient. You don't want to be a burden on the system. You don't want to be going to, how many people go to Moab that are just woefully ill-prepared? They don't have any communication. They don't have any maps or navigation. They have no emergency supplies, no tools, nothing. They become a burden. And we don't want this community to be a burden on local areas.
Yep.
I think that that's really important.
And just recently, Nina Barlow from, Barlow, they do Jeep rentals.
Barlow Adventures, yeah.
Yeah, she wrote a story about one of their clients that died recently in the Canyonlands area because he didn't go prepared. He didn't have enough water. He got back to within a half a mile from his Jeep before he died. That is so tragic to not just take that extra step of making sure you have good communications or something with you.
And that is not a reflection on Nina. Nina's business is one of the foremost outfitters, I think,
no
in the
question.
country. She's an I4WDTA trainer. She leads a lot of training. She's a very prepared woman, very talented trainer. She would have run this guy through all of the processes. It sounds trivial, but so many people die because they don't bring enough water, particularly in the Southwest. I don't want to paint a picture, but typically they're coming from a city or something like that. They don't even have to be, they can be anyone, but they don't figure in the effect of the altitude that's going to happen. They don't affect the dryness in the air on the West Coast. They don't consider the effect of the sun. And the difficulty of the terrain and the fact that you're walking through sand.
Nina wrote the story. It was actually on Expedition Portal. She wrote it as a cautionary tale. Her team members had asked a bunch of questions and the guy lied about a lot of it or misrepresented himself in a lot of it. He said he was going with a group. He went alone, those kinds of things. And he paid the ultimate price. So when we're talking about basic equipment, this is just to be mindful, not only of our own.
The easy solution there was the guy should have brought enough water. I'm not getting into the politics of it. We're obviously very, very sorry that this person passed away and our condolences to their family. But an easy way around that is a spot or an inReach, a personal locator beacon. Spots and inReach I really like because, some spots, but I believe all inReaches allow two-way text message communication. That's a very succinct, accurate way of relaying information. Sometimes when you have a radio, there may not be a person on the other end, and you may not have the skills. You may not be a ham operator to know how to reach those people, how to do the repeaters, etc. So like an inReach, I think
all day long,
almost no one has an excuse to not have one. I don't, I need to get one. A lot of the Garmin devices, Garmin recently purchased inReach from Delorme, or they bought Delorme or something. Like the Garmin Overlander, I think even links with it. It's kind of cool. But those things are something that anyone can go buy. They subscribe to the service and they work. They allow that communication. If you want to have something that doesn't require a subscription, personal locator beacons work on triangulation of frequencies. Those are fantastic too. Just don't expect. I don't want to say those are very 1.0, and now we have the 2.0, which is that inReach.
The personal locator beacons are extremely effective, but oftentimes when someone is under duress, they want more than anything in the world to know that somebody got the message.
Yeah.
And if you use a Garmin InReach, which is what I like to use, it's based on the Iridium satellite network. It works everywhere in the world. If you have a clear view of the sky, and you can get that ping back saying, and maybe it's just that you have too many flat tires and you can't repair them, and you need to get a hold of a buddy to bring you out, just for them to say, no problem, we've got your message, we're on our way.
Yep.
That settles all of those concerns down. You can be very specific about what you need. Maybe you've injured yourself and you need someone to bring an extra driver. You can communicate those specifics.
Yeah, maybe you just need a belt for your car.
That's
you need
it.
A serpentine belt. Yep. You don't need the proverbial cavalry to fly in.
Right.
You need the local, four-wheel drive recovery guy to bring you a belt.
Yeah, totally.
Or whatever that is. Navigation we've kind of covered. That's really important. Maps.
Have some redundancy though.
Have redundancy. I really like the apps. I like Gaia. I like Onyx. I have yet to have a app. Now this is my experience. I have yet to have an app not fail in the field. The offline maps, I mean, they're good, but I have had several significant adventures where I get out day one and all of a sudden there's been an update. I mean, you just had that with an app. There's been an update, whether it's the app that was updated or it was Apple or Android.
For me, it was the iOS update killed one of the apps and it wasn't recording a track properly.
Yeah. So again, paper maps, I think are huge and have a common sense idea of where you're going. Don't be one of those people that follows the arrow and never knows which way is north or anything like that.
And let other people know, let a couple people know where you're going. So that way, if you don't show up in a week, there's somebody that starts looking for you and they at least have an idea of where to go.
Yeah. Emergency supplies. We just kind of went over that with, that unfortunate guy that passed away in Utah, but water. People always have a bunch of food with them. They never bring enough water. I
having enough medications, for example, having a properly stocked medical kit and the training to use it. Those are the kinds of medical supplies and emergency supplies that we need to have going along with us. We don't need to be total preppers. We just need to be able to handle those 36 hours-ish of problems or that injury that happens, the sprained ankle or the deep cut.
Because the reality is that most of the stuff that you're going to encounter is really minor. It's going to be, you got stung by a bee, you had an allergic reaction, you got a cut that got infected, you fell and scraped a knee, right?
Yeah, totally.
It's going to be that stuff. Make sure your bases are covered. There's always going to be somebody out there that is going to be the prepper that is like, well, why don't you have a paramedic level kit with you? And it's like, well, because I don't have the time to become a paramedic.
Yeah.
I'm not a paramedic. I don't know how to use this.
It seems like that oftentimes when people don't travel a lot, when they don't have a lot of travel, they focus on those check marks of equipment.
Yeah.
Like that I've got this, and this, and then their vehicle's way over payload. Whereas I think the more that we just get out and enjoy it and have fun and laugh with our family, the more we just don't care.
Yeah, just bring the basics to get out. You do not need a lot of the stuff that people are going to tell you that you do need. You need basic tools. You need to be able to, you need to know how to change a tire. You need to know how to make basic vehicle assessments like, my battery is dead. Why is my battery dead?
Or how do I jump it? Yeah.
How do I jump it? Recovery gear is important. I'm not saying that you necessarily have to know how to repair a flat tire. I think it is really handy to have a bottle of like that slime stuff, because that can kind of nurse, you have your one spare. And if you have that slime, and they even have ones that you can get from Walmart that are, they have a little air compressor and stuff with them.
We're talking about version 2 1.0 of starting overlanding. Maybe in the future we'll have a 2.0.
Yeah,
but
maybe then you'll have the built-in air compressor and the this and the that and whatever.
But don't feel like you've got to have all of this experience and all of this equipment to go. Have a good spare tire that's the same diameter as the rest of them, and check that it's got air. Make sure you got an air compressor. It is a good idea to bring along a tire repair kit and have someone show you how to use it. But if you don't, it's not a reason not to go. And I think this also comes back to that engaging the family and engaging your partner. Show them where all this stuff is. Show them where the medical kit is. That's going to start to give them confidence in you. It's going to give them confidence in the fact that you've actually been planning this thing. So when your husband's nervous and his brow's sweating because he's about ready to go on this big trip with you, you can show him, look, dear, I've got the medical kit here. I've got this training. I learned how to do the 4-wheel drive thing. This is the locking differentials. This is where the toolkit is. Yep. And then he's going to feel a lot more comfortable about it.
Learn how to lower your tire pressure.
Yeah.
That will make everyone comfortable. And there's a lot of resources on this stuff on Expedition Portal. There's vehicle specific forums that have a lot of information as well.
Yeah. Like I Hate Mud
is a great tool. One. I have to say for the moto guys out there, I find that Adventure Rider, advrider.com, I can Google or search for the most remote places in the world, and there will be a thread for it on ADV Rider that says where the gas is because they don't have the range, where the good eats are, where are the places to stay. So use the Oracle, use the internet.
Totally.
Tires are super, super important.
Yeah. If you were going to do one modification to the vehicle, make sure if it doesn't come with light truck tires, that you buy light truck tires. And we're not saying you have to have LT tires to go. But if you're thinking about spending some money on the vehicle and you're looking for the first thing to do that with,
a set of all-terrain tires has very little downside. Yep. Oftentimes they can double, if you get the BFG KO2s or you get the Falcon AT3Ws or a few other tires. Those are just the ones that I personally, it's not an endorsement. We're not sponsored by them. Those are just what I've used. I like them because they're winter rated. So that's, if this is something that's new to you, these tires are going to be better all year round.
Yep.
That's great. Recovery gear, I think is important.
It is. And bring along a way to help someone else get out. So that can be a kinetic strap. I like to bring along Max Tracks for that. In full disclosure, Matt does import the Max Tracks into North America. So you can, if you choose, disregard anything that I say regarding that. But I do bring along Max Tracks because I can use them on my own vehicle, or I can walk down the trail even outside of winch range and help another vehicle get out.
If I was to remove myself from who I am, they just don't really require much training and they have very little downside.
Yep.
A winch can put you in a worse situation. A snatch strap can put you in a worse, or kinetic rope can put you in a worse situation. I think if you are a beginner, look for things that have less consequence. That's all I'm going to say. I think kind of remove myself from that.
Yeah. And there's lots of tools out there. Use the thing that makes sense to you and fits for your environment. If you're going to go do a muddy trail where you're going to be winching multiple times a day, it'd be a good idea to bring a winch.
Yeah.
If you're going to be in the desert Southwest, you probably only need a set of Max Tracks.
Yeah. And I think too, I don't want to rag on this, but everybody's, you need a high lift jack. It's like 80 pounds of dead weight for most people.
45 pounds.
45, whatever it is, right?
It feels like 80, I'll tell you.
It feels like 80 pounds when you pick them up. They are very useful when you are trained on them. I will never argue against the utility of them. But for a first-time person, it is crazy how many people I see that have a Jeep Wrangler, let's say, and they have plastic bumpers, they have no side sill protection, and they have a high lift jack.
Now, can't lift the vehicle from it.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess you can use they had those wheel chock adapters, so you could, in theory, pick a tire up to throw some stuff underneath it. But you don't always have to have the things that everybody just bolts onto their car.
Yeah, that's a full tank of fuel. And it does require some training. Just YouTube high lift jack accidents. And I think that's all the description that we could ever give you.
Yeah, I'm all for high lift jacks.
Yeah.
Great company. very, very useful tool. You have to have training to use it.
You really do.
And that's where...
And the vehicle needs to be prepared for using the high lift as well. It needs to have rocker panel protection that you can lift from, that can take the weight of the vehicle. It needs to have metal bumpers, especially ones that allow it to capture the high lift so it can't slide off. There's a lot that goes into using a high lift. Again, we're not bashing the product. We're just saying for your first overland journey, use that money, put it in the gas tank and go a little further. Right. And I think that really covers the basic stuff. Again, we do have a lot more in podcast number 20. But I do have a couple thoughts as I wrap up, and I know Matt will have some of his own, but and again, all of this comes from the fact that I have screwed all of this stuff up myself.
We both have.
So many times I've gotten upset. I've cut trips short because I was frustrated. I got frustrated at myself. And I have learned through the years to slow down. I've learned to expect less from myself and from the vehicle and from the trip. If you go into it with this expectation of being able to circumnavigate Africa in 2 months, you're going to have a really bad time. If you choose to do Namibia and South Africa in 2 months, you're going to have a fairly good time. So slow down, expect less, do less. Don't be afraid to sleep in. You're not working anymore.
You have to enjoy it. This is by nature a vacation.
Yeah, stay up, bask under the moon until 2 a.m, read a book until you finish it, and sleep in. And, most of these roof tents and tents, they have pretty good light protection. Make a good meal. When you have people with you, taking that time as a family to prepare a great meal that you sourced from local ingredients, or maybe you went to the farmer's market in Bend, Oregon, and you loaded up before you went out to the Steens, and you're using these local ingredients and you're making this great food. It just adds so much to the experience. Leave the mountain house for emergencies and make a great meal as a group, and bring things that do enhance the comfort. There's no shame in having a big fluffy pillow along with you. If you can fit it. When you're on a motorcycle, that's a little more difficult, but bring the pillow that helps you sleep the best. Make sure that you have the sleeping pad. If you
don't sleep, like I bring my pillows from home that I put in my Gladiator.
Me too.
Because I sleep well with them and I know I'm going to sleep well with them.
Yeah, it's that one little connection to home that helps us fall asleep and helps us remember that, it's easy to sleep on this because we like it. Bring comfy chairs. Now, some of them can be ridiculously large, but bring chairs that are comfortable to sit in. So that way you can sit around the campfire for hours and drink that special whiskey that you got, or finish the book that you wanted to read, or just sit and talk with your family. If the chairs, like those little 3-legged stools forget that stuff. It's just terrible. You'd rather stand. Yeah. So bring a comfortable set of chairs.
You don't have to suffer.
Yeah, you really don't.
That's the thing.
And like Matt said, don't be afraid to take a walk, get away from the vehicle, take a hike.
Isn't it Barry Andrews? It's like I said remote. I didn't say primitive.
That's right. Yeah. Barry's, I definitely attribute that to him. That was his statement. And that's a great one for sure.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it is just slow down, breathe in, breathe out, enjoy the time, recognize that you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. Like think of them, turn the negative into a positive. Oh man, I got stuck here. Okay, well, I'm going to realize what I did wrong.
Yeah. You got to take that photo for the gram, right?
Yeah. Just don't take it too seriously. Be prepared. There's a difference between being prepared and being on, a military death march. Like I've been on trips with people before where it's 7:15. We have to be out of camp. And I'm like, I don't know what it is with camping, and people get very primal and weird and militaristic, but just chill out and enjoy it. Cause you are there. You're doing this for fun.
Yeah. It's supposed to be fun.
You are not on a scientific expedition. You're not, shockingly, you're not on an expedition. You're on a road trip. You're on an overland trip. Call it whatever you want. But the point being, you're essentially on a vacation. Treat it as such.
Yeah, have fun with it. Smile, laugh,
enjoy it.
Make some memories.
Don't get mad at somebody because, maybe you've camped a bunch. Maybe your partner hasn't. don't get mad at him for that.
Yeah. If he breaks the spork, don't be upset.
Yeah. You don't need it. And you don't need a titanium spork to go overlanding. Let's just.
And on that bombshell, thank you all for listening, and we will talk to you next time.
Take care, guys and girls.